"The debt is paid, I'm leaving," she said. "The Mafia boss blocked the door who said you could go." The city slept under a heavy cloak of darkness, its narrow streets twisting like veins, alive with whispers of secrets, debts, and old curses. Neon lights flickered, casting pale shadows across wet cobblestones. In this city, power was measured in fear, and fear was the currency of survival. At the very top of this shadowed world stood Victor, known to some as the king of the underworld, feared by many, and admired by a few brave enough to speak his name aloud. Alara walked quietly along the edge of the city's old district, her boots silent against the cold stones. Her cloak hugged her shoulders tightly, shielding her from both the winter air and prying eyes. Every step she took carried years of careful calculation, skill, and restraint. For 7 years she had worked, endured, and repaid the debt that had been thrust upon her. She had followed every order, obeyed every command, and survived every danger. And now she was free. At least, that was what she told herself. Her mind replayed the last conversation she had with Victor. She had faced him in his office, a massive room lined with dark wood, shelves of books with leather spines, and artifacts from both the city and lands far beyond it. Victor had been leaning against his desk, tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair falling slightly over his stormy eyes. There was an unshakable presence about him, like a mountain in human form, and yet there had always been a strange curiosity hidden beneath his cold exterior. "The debt is paid," Alara had said, her voice steady, though her hands had trembled ever so slightly. "I'm leaving, that's the end of it." Victor had stepped forward, the faintest smirk playing on his lips. His eyes, dark as midnight and unreadable, had held her gaze. "Who said you could go?" he asked quietly, yet the question was sharp enough to cut through her resolve. Alara had clenched her fists. She had known this moment would come, but hearing it spoken aloud made her pulse quicken. "I've done everything you asked. I've followed your orders, I've paid my debt. What more do you want from me?" He had tilted his head slightly, studying her. "Freedom isn't something you take, Alara. It's something you earn, and sometimes it isn't given until all truths are revealed." She had frowned, confused and irritated. Truths. She had no secrets left. She had handed everything over, suffered every trial, and survived. And yet, Victor's eyes held the weight of a storm she could not yet name. Now, walking through the empty streets, Alara wondered how long it would take before Victor came to stop her. She had a small bag with her belongings, the only item she allowed herself to keep through the years. She had no home of her own, no family waiting, but she had her freedom, she hoped. As she turned a corner, the city suddenly felt heavier, the shadows closer. Her instincts, honed over years of careful observation and danger, screamed at her to be alert. She paused, glancing at the dark alley to her right. Something moved there. "Who's there?" she called softly, her voice steady but her heart racing. No answer came, only the soft echo of her own words bouncing off the walls. She shook her head, trying to calm herself. Perhaps it was nothing. Perhaps it was just her imagination. Still, she quickened her pace. She needed to get to the edge of the district before anyone could intercept her. But even as she moved, she could not shake the feeling that eyes were on her, following every step, waiting. Hours earlier, she had thought freedom was a step away. Now it seemed like it had drifted further from her grasp. Victor's mansion loomed ahead, though from this distance it looked more like a fortress than a home. He had given her shelter, yes, but only under his terms. She had never been allowed true privacy within its walls. Every door, every hallway, every window was a reminder of the chains she had quietly endured. And now, even if she left, she could not shake the feeling that Victor would not let her go so easily. A sudden rustle made her spin. Her hand instinctively went to the dagger she carried, not for violence but for protection. The alley was empty. Her breath came quickly now, and she felt a bead of sweat trace down her temple. Then she heard the sound, a low, familiar chuckle carried on the wind. Her blood ran cold. Victor. She hadn't seen him appear, but he was there, stepping from the shadows as if he had always been there, moving with a silent authority that made her stomach twist. He was dressed simply, dark clothes that blended into the night, yet he radiated dominance like the sun radiates light. "Alara," he said, voice calm but commanding. "Going somewhere," her jaw tightened. "I said I'm leaving. You can't stop me." He took a slow step forward. "Can I or won't I?" His storm-dark eyes studied her, unyielding, like he was trying to see into her very soul. "You think paying a debt is enough to erase every tie that binds you to me, every secret we've shared, every danger you've survived? No, freedom isn't that simple." Alara swallowed hard. The years of fear, obedience, and survival seemed to press down on her shoulders, heavier than ever. And yet she refused to show weakness. "Then tell me what I need to do. If there's one last thing to finish, I'll do it. But after that," she took a step forward, "I leave." Victor's lips curved into the faintest smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "There's no more last thing, Alara. There's only the truth, and the truth that may change everything you believe about yourself and about me." The words struck her like cold iron. She didn't understand, but she felt the weight of them. Her legs shook, not from fear, but from the tension that had built inside her over years of controlled restraint. She had survived monsters, rival factions, betrayal, and her own doubts, and yet Victor's presence made her feel vulnerable in a way she could not explain. "Why do you care?" she whispered. "Why does any of this matter to you?" He stepped closer, reducing the small space between them to mere inches. She could feel the faint heat of his presence, the quiet authority that demanded attention. "Because, Alara," he said softly, "you are unlike anyone I have ever known. And because I promised long ago to keep what is mine safe. Whether you like it or not, that includes you." The words hung in the night, heavy and binding. Alara's heart raced, not with fear but with something she did not yet name. Anger, desire, confusion. All of it twisted together in a knot she could not untangle. "I'm not yours," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor beneath it. "I've never been yours, I never will be." Victor's smile faded. His expression hardened, though his eyes softened just slightly, betraying a flicker of something she had never seen before, regret. "Perhaps," he said quietly. "But for now, you remain in my world, and until the truth about your curse is revealed, you will stay." "That is not a request, Alara. It is a law of this city and of the debts that bind us." Her pulse quickened, a mixture of frustration and curiosity clawing at her. Curse, debt, what did he mean? All her life she had worked to survive, to be free of any chains. But now, it seemed, she had only stepped into another. Alara took a step back, but the sound of her movement was drowned by the soft patter of rain beginning to fall. The city streets glistened under the droplets, reflecting the neon lights like shards of broken glass. She shivered, not from cold, but from the weight of what she could not yet understand. "I'll go," she said finally, her voice steady, though her mind raced with questions. "Once I know, once I understand what you mean." Victor's eyes narrowed and he tilted his head, watching her like a predator studying its prey. "Understanding is earned, Alara. And sometimes it is not given until you are ready to see the truth, no matter how difficult it may be." She wanted to argue, she wanted to flee. She wanted to scream that she had had enough of secrets, enough of debts, enough of fear. But deep down, she knew she could not. Victor had always been one step ahead, always able to read her thoughts before she even spoke them. The rain began to fall harder, drumming a steady rhythm on the stones, on the rooftops, on the edges of the world they both inhabited. Alara stared at him, knowing this was not the end, but the beginning of something far more complex than she could imagine. And then, without a sound, Victor turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving her alone. But she knew he had not left. He never truly left. And somewhere deep within her, a seed of unease and something unspoken took root. Alara looked up at the dark sky, the clouds swirling like restless spirits, and whispered to herself, "I am free, I will be free." But in the shadows, Victor watched, and his eyes were storm-dark and unyielding. "You are not yet free, Alara," he murmured. "Not until the truth has found you." And with that the city swallowed him, and her fears whole. The mansion rose from the hill like a dark sentinel over the city, its stone walls heavy with secrets, its towers sharp against the night sky. Rain had stopped, leaving the world slick and shining, reflecting the lights of distant streets. Alara walked along the mansion's pathway, her cloak damp from the earlier storm. Victor had not stopped her from entering, but he had not let her leave either. Inside, the house was warm but filled with an unspoken tension. Candles flickered in sconces along the walls, and the scent of old wood and polished stone hung in the air. Every step Alara took seemed to echo too loudly, as if the house itself was listening. She tried to keep her composure, reminding herself of what she had accomplished. 7 years of debt, 7 years of survival, and yet here she was, still tied to Victor, still in his world. The thought made her chest tighten. Victor appeared behind her without a sound, as if he had walked through the shadows themselves. He was calm, controlled, yet there was a subtle intensity in his eyes that made her pulse quicken. "Ilara," he said, voice low, almost gentle, "you look unsettled." "I am," she admitted. "You said there was a truth I must face. What is it? Why am I still here?" He studied her for a moment, and she could see the weight of thought in his expression. "You are not just here because of debts you owed me. There is more. Something that has followed your bloodline for generations. Something dangerous and powerful." Ilara's brow furrowed. "Dangerous? What do you mean?" Victor walked to a large window overlooking the city, his fingers brushing the cold glass. "Your family," he said slowly, "was cursed many years ago. A betrayal in your bloodline left a mark that can bring ruin or redemption. I cannot let you leave until you understand it. Not because I wish to control you, but because leaving without knowing could destroy you." Her heart skipped a beat. A curse. She had always felt different, a sense of tension in her life that she could not explain, but she had never thought of it as a curse. "Why me? Why now?" she asked quietly. "Because it is your time," Victor said, turning to face her. His eyes were dark, but in them there was a strange care she had never seen before. "And because your curse is tied to someone, tied to me, whether you believe it or not." Ilara felt a cold shiver run through her. She had always been careful, always aware of danger, but Victor's words made the ground shift beneath her. Tied to him. How could she be tied to a man she barely understood, a man who had ruled the city with fear for so long? Before she could respond, Victor's expression softened. "I am not your enemy, Ilara. I am here to guide you, to help you survive what is coming." Despite her fear, she felt a small flicker of trust. Victor had always been a mystery, a figure of danger and power. But tonight there was something different. He seemed human, vulnerable even though he would never admit it aloud. "Show me," she whispered. "Show me what this curse is. I want to understand." Victor nodded, a rare and small smile touching his lips. "Very well, come with me." He led her down a corridor lined with bookshelves, the soft glow of candles lighting their path. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the walls themselves pressed in. They reached a large study, filled with ancient books, scrolls, and artifacts. On a table lay a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. "This belonged to your ancestor," Victor said, picking it up carefully. "It contains the story of the betrayal, the curse, and the powers that followed your family through generations. Read it carefully. Every word matters." Ilara took the journal, her fingers trembling slightly. As she opened it, the handwriting seemed familiar, almost alive. The pages told the story of her great-grandmother, a woman of intelligence and courage, who had been betrayed by someone she trusted, a nobleman with ambition beyond reason. The betrayal had brought a curse upon her bloodline. Anyone who loved or trusted her family deeply could face ruin, but those with courage and loyalty could unlock redemption. Alara's eyes widened. This is real. Victor's gaze was steady. As real as the city under your feet. Your blood carries the choice of life or ruin, and you are the first in generations strong enough to face it fully. Her mind raced. All her life she had survived hardships, feared for her life and followed rules that were never her own. And yet nothing had prepared her for the weight of this revelation. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why not let me live a normal life?" "Because normal is not your fate," Victor said softly, "and because you have the strength to change it. I can guide you, but only if you trust me, only if you accept that we are linked by the curse, by fate, by blood." Alara swallowed hard. She wanted to protest, to run, to deny every word. But deep down, she knew the truth in his eyes. The city, the danger, the mysterious tension she had always felt in life, it all pointed to something larger than herself. And now she stood in the center of it. They spent hours in the study, going through the journal. Victor explained the meaning of cryptic passages, the nature of the curse, and the dangers that lurked. Alara listened carefully, absorbing every word. She realized that her life had been more than just survival, it had been preparation. Every trial, every fear, every moment of obedience had honed her strength for what was coming. As the night deepened, the mansion fell silent except for the faint crackle of the fireplace. Alara felt exhausted but alive, as if a door had opened in her mind. She finally looked at Victor, who was sitting across from her, his usual intensity softened by the glow of the fire. "You are remarkable," he said quietly, "stronger than anyone I have known. But strength is only part of the battle. Wisdom, courage, and trust, those are just as important." Alara met his gaze, her heart racing. There was something in the way he spoke, a sincerity she had not expected. It unsettled her, yet made her feel seen. "I still don't understand everything," she admitted. "But I want to. I want to survive this, and I want to be free." Victor stood, moving closer. The space between them was small, charged with tension. "Freedom is earned, Alara, and sometimes the path to it is not easy. But you are capable, I know it." The firelight flickered across his face, revealing a shadow of something more, pain perhaps, or longing. Alara felt a pull she could not name, a connection deeper than fear, deeper than respect. Before she could speak, a sound echoed from the mansion's upper floor, a soft thud almost imperceptible. Victor's gaze sharpened instantly and he moved toward the staircase with silent precision. "Alara," he said over his shoulder, "stay here, do not move." She watched him disappear into the shadows, her pulse quickening. Something had shifted in the house, something unseen and threatening. And yet she could not tear her eyes away from the place where he had vanished. Minutes passed like hours. The silence pressed against her chest. Then Victor returned, carrying a small, intricately carved box. He set it on the table before her. "This," he said, voice low and steady, "contains a part of your family's history, a key to understanding the curse fully. But be warned, it is not a gift. It is knowledge, and knowledge can be dangerous." Alara reached for the box, her fingers trembling. She opened it carefully. Inside lay a pendant, shaped like a crescent moon, and a folded letter written in the same ancient handwriting as the journal. She unfolded the letter and began to read. The words spoke of choices, of loyalty, of love and loss. They spoke of the burden she carried in her blood and the power she had yet to claim. Every sentence made her pulse quicken. Every word felt like a whisper from the past. She looked up at Victor. This is too much," she said. "I don't know if I'm ready." "You are," he said firmly. "I have watched you, Alara. I have seen what you are capable of, and I will not let you face this alone. But you must decide, will you embrace it or let it control you?" Her mind swirled with thoughts, fear, and a strange sense of destiny. She had spent her life surviving. Now, for the first time, she felt she could choose, not just survive, but shape her own fate. The candlelight flickered across Victor's face, and she noticed the faintest softening in his eyes. She began, then paused. I will face it. I will learn, but I won't be controlled, not by anyone. Victor nodded slowly, a faint smile touching his lips. Good, that is the first step, and I promise you I will not try to control you, only guide you, only protect you. Elara felt a strange warmth in her chest. It was the first time she had felt safe with him, not because she trusted him blindly, but because she felt he truly understood the weight she carried. Outside, the city continued its restless night. Inside the mansion, two figures sat in quiet determination. One, a young woman who had survived everything life had thrown at her. The other, a man shaped by power and danger, yet touched by something he rarely admitted: care. And somewhere between shadows, secrets, and curses, a bond began to grow, fragile, tense, and impossible to ignore. The city slept, unaware of the storm gathering in its shadows. From high above, the streets looked quiet, even peaceful. But Elara knew better. Danger lurked in every alley, every abandoned building, every whisper that floated through the night. Her bloodline carried a curse, Victor had said, and that curse had enemies who would stop at nothing to exploit it. She stood at the edge of the mansion's balcony, rain again falling softly around her. The night air was cold and sharp, carrying the distant sounds of life and the faint echo of voices she could not quite hear. Her hands clutched the pendant Victor had given her, the crescent moon that held the key to understanding her power. She had spent hours studying it, reading the letter, and trying to grasp the legacy that came with her blood. Victor appeared behind her without a sound, his presence steady, almost magnetic. "You should rest," he said, voice low, almost gentle. "The night can be unforgiving, and tomorrow will demand more of you than you realize." Elara shook her head. "I cannot rest, not yet. Every moment I wait, every second I do not understand this curse fully, the danger grows." He studied her for a long moment, as if weighing whether to argue or yield. Finally, he spoke. "You are right, but strength alone will not protect you. You must learn the rules of your blood, the limits of the curse, and the people who will seek to use it against you. That knowledge will be your greatest weapon and your greatest burden." Elara took a deep breath, staring at the city below. "Then teach me," she said. "I am ready to face it." Victor's expression softened, though the storm in his eyes never fully left. "Very well," he said, "but know this, knowledge is never free. Every answer comes with a question, and every question may lead to danger." He led her into the mansion's library, a vast room filled with towering shelves of books, scrolls, and artifacts collected over centuries. At the center of the room was a large map of the city, marked with symbols she did not yet understand. Victor traced a finger across the map. "Your enemies are many," he said quietly. "Some know of your curse, others suspect it, and a few will try to use it for their own gain. If you leave this mansion now, you risk becoming a pawn in their games. If you stay, you may learn to control your power before it is too late." Elara nodded, absorbing his words. She had survived countless threats before, but this felt different. This was not about money, loyalty, or revenge. This was about a legacy written in blood and magic, a power she had yet to fully understand. "Where do we begin?" she asked. Victor handed her a small, worn book, bound in dark leather. "This is the chronicle of your family," he said. "It contains stories of your ancestors, their triumphs, their betrayals, and the origins of the curse. Read it carefully. Every detail matters." Elara opened the book, her eyes scanning the pages. Tales of courage, of sacrifice, and of betrayal unfolded before her. She read of her great-grandmother, a woman who had been betrayed by a trusted ally, leading to the curse that now haunted her bloodline. The curse was both a warning and a test. Those who loved deeply could bring ruin, but those who were courageous and wise could unlock redemption. As she read, she felt the weight of her ancestors pressing on her shoulders. Every story resonated with her own experiences, her own struggles, and the choices she had made. She realized that her life had been a preparation for this very moment, a moment when she would either succumb to the curse or rise above it. Victor watched her quietly, his expression unreadable. "Do you understand what this means?" he asked finally. Alara closed the book, her hands trembling slightly. "It means I am not just surviving for myself. I am carrying the weight of my family, my blood, and this curse. Everything I do matters, not just for me but for the future of my bloodline." Victor nodded. "Exactly. And that is why I cannot let you leave, not yet. You are stronger than you realize, but strength alone will not protect you. You must learn to control your power, understand your enemies, and trust no one fully until you know their intentions." She met his gaze, her heart racing. "And what about you?" she asked softly. "Do you trust me?" Victor's eyes darkened, and for a moment she saw a vulnerability he rarely allowed others to see. "I trust you to survive," he said quietly. "But trust is earned, Alara, and in our world it is a dangerous thing." The air between them was thick with unspoken words. Alara felt a pull toward him, a mixture of respect, fear, and something she could not name. Victor was a man of power, of danger, yet he was also her guide, her protector, and perhaps, in ways she did not yet understand, a part of her destiny. Suddenly, a noise echoed from the mansion's corridors, a soft, deliberate footstep. Both of them turned, their senses alert. Victor's hand went to the dagger at his belt, and Alara felt a rush of adrenaline. A figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked in darkness, their face hidden. Victor stepped in front of Alara, his body tense, ready to act. "Who's there?" he demanded. The figure stopped, raising their hands slightly. "I mean no harm, not yet," a calm voice said. "But you must know, the city is not as safe as you think. Your enemies are moving, they know of her power." Victor's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" "I am someone who has watched your family for generations," the figure replied. "I know of the curse and I know what it can do. But be warned, those who seek to use it will stop at nothing. If you do not act, the consequences will be catastrophic." Alara felt a chill run down her spine. This was more than she had imagined. Her curse was not just a story, a legacy, or a warning. It was a force others desired, a power that could shape the fate of the city itself. "Thank you for the warning," Victor said, his voice calm but firm. "But we are prepared. We have already begun to understand the curse, and we will not be caught unaware." The figure inclined their head, then disappeared into the shadows as silently as they had appeared. Alara exhaled, trying to calm her racing heart. She had known danger was coming, but now it was closer, more real than ever. Victor turned to her, his expression serious. "This is why you must learn quickly," he said. "Your bloodline carries power but also responsibility. If you are to survive, you must understand not only your curse but the people who would use it against you." Alara nodded, gripping the pendant around her neck. "I will, I promise. I won't let them win. I won't let the curse control me." Victor studied her for a long moment, then finally allowed a faint smile to touch his lips. "Good. That is the first step. Courage, wisdom, and determination, those are the tools you must wield. And I will help you, even if it means standing against the world itself." The night deepened, and the mansion seemed alive with shadows and whispers. Alara and Victor worked together, going through the chronicles, mapping out potential threats and preparing for what was to come. With each passing hour, Alara felt herself growing stronger, more aware, more in control of the power that flowed through her veins. Yet even as she learned, even as she prepared, a small part of her could not ignore the growing connection between herself and Victor. It was subtle, a glance held too long, a hand brushing against hers, a shared silence in the flickering candlelight. Each moment was charged, tense, and impossible to ignore. But there was no time for hesitation. The city below was alive with unseen eyes, plotting and watching. Every step they took, every decision they made could change the course of their lives forever. As dawn approached, Alara stood by the window, looking out at the first light of day breaking through the clouds. Victor joined her, silent but present. "You are ready," he said finally. "Not fully, not completely, but enough to face what is coming. Remember, survival is not just about strength. It is about knowledge, trust, and courage." Alara nodded, feeling a mix of fear and determination. She had spent her life surviving. Now she would fight, not just for herself, but for the legacy of her blood, for her future, and for the bond she could not yet name. And somewhere in the shadows of the city, unseen forces were moving, their intentions hidden but dangerous. The game had begun, and there would be no turning back. The city was quiet under the moonlight, but the silence was false. Shadows moved, secrets whispered, and danger breathed in every alley. Alara stood at the top of the mansion's tallest tower, looking down at the streets below. Her hands gripped the railing, the crescent moon pendant warm against her chest. Tonight, everything would change. She could feel it in the air. Victor appeared behind her, as silent and imposing as ever. His dark eyes scanned the horizon, alert to every movement. "They are coming," he said quietly, not needing to explain who they were. The city's factions, rivals who sought to use her curse for their own gain, had discovered her. They would strike tonight, and she had to be ready. Alara nodded, her fingers tightening around the pendant. "I am ready," she said, though her heart raced. "I've learned. I know my power, and I know I won't let them control me." Victor studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he placed a hand on her shoulder, a rare gesture of reassurance. "I trust you," he said softly. "Not because I must, but because I believe you can face this and survive." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain from the earlier storm and the faint smoke of the city's chimneys. Alara closed her eyes for a moment, letting the energy of her bloodline and the lessons Victor had taught her settle inside her. She felt it, a pulse of strength, courage, and determination. The curse that had haunted her family for generations was not a chain tonight. It was a shield. Below, the first figures appeared in the streets. Shadows moved with purpose, and Alara's heart clenched. Victor's hand tightened on the hilt of his dagger, his body coiled like a predator ready to strike. But he did not move. He trusted her to act first. Alara inhaled deeply. She focused on the pendant, letting its warmth spread through her body. She felt the curse awaken, not as a threat but as a tool. Her senses sharpened, her mind clear. The streets below were no longer a maze of danger. They were a chessboard, and she could see every piece. "They are close," she said, her voice steady. "I can feel them." Victor nodded. "Then let us end this tonight, together." The first attackers moved into the open, unaware that Alara was ready. She stepped forward, the pendant glowing faintly against her chest. A wave of energy pulsed from her, strong and controlled, pushing the first shadows back. The attackers faltered, surprised by the force. Victor leapt into action, moving like a shadow himself. He blocked and disarmed with precision, his presence a wall of strength beside Alara. Together, they were a force neither enemy nor fate could easily break. Alara felt her confidence grow with each moment. She realized that the curse was not just her burden, it was her power. Every heartbeat, every breath, every movement was connected to generations of her family who had survived, fought, and endured. She was the culmination of that strength. One of the attackers advanced too quickly, trying to flank her. Alara shifted, her movements fluid, and the pendant pulsed with light. A force surged from her, pushing the attacker back with gentle but undeniable power. He stumbled, eyes wide, and retreated into the shadows. Victor caught her gaze, his usual intensity softening just slightly. "You are remarkable," he said quietly, even amidst the chaos. Alara felt a warmth in her chest, not from victory, but from the acknowledgement. She had feared her curse, her destiny, and even Victor's power. But now she saw that fear was a choice, and so was courage. The battle continued, but Alara moved with a clarity she had never known. She guided Victor, signaling when to strike, when to hold back, and when to let the enemies fall into their own traps. Together they were unstoppable, not just because of strength, but because of trust and understanding. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. By the time the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the streets were quiet again. The attackers had vanished, retreating into the shadows from which they came, leaving the city safe for the moment. Alara and Victor stood on the tower, breathing heavily but victorious. The pendant glowed softly against her chest, a reminder of the power she now fully understood and controlled. She felt a sense of peace she had never experienced, freedom not taken, but earned. Victor turned to her, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he smiled, not a smirk, not a challenge, but a real human smile. "You have done it," he said quietly. "You have faced the curse, faced your enemies, and you have not only survived, you have thrived." Alara let out a long breath, feeling the weight of years lift from her shoulders. "It wasn't easy," she admitted, a small smile tugging at her lips. "But I finally understand. The curse, it's not a punishment, it's a choice. And I chose to be stronger than it." Victor stepped closer, his presence warm and steady. "And I chose to trust you," he said softly. "Not because I could force it, but because you earned it. Not everyone can do what you did tonight, Alara. You are extraordinary." For a moment they stood in silence, the city waking beneath them, the light of dawn reflecting off the rooftops. Alara felt a connection she had never allowed herself to name, a bond of respect, trust, and something deeper. Victor was not just her protector, he was her equal in strength, courage, and resolve. "I think," she said quietly, "that this is the first time in my life I feel free, not just from debts or fear, but from everything that held me back." Victor nodded, his eyes softening. "Freedom is not just leaving," he said. "It is understanding, embracing, and facing the truth. Tonight you did all of that, and more." They descended from the tower together, moving through the mansion with quiet steps. The morning air was cool and clean, carrying the promise of a new day. The city had survived the night, and so had they. But more importantly, Alara had survived herself. In the garden, where the first rays of sunlight touched the flowers and the fountain sparkled with the morning light, Victor stopped. "Alara," he said, his voice low, almost hesitant, "I need you to know you are not alone. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Not as master and debt payer, not as protector and charge, but as equals, as partners." Alara felt her heart quicken. The past, with its fear, pain, and obedience, was gone. She was no longer just a survivor, she was a force in her own right. And for the first time, she realized that trust could be more powerful than fear, courage stronger than any curse. "I understand," she said, her voice steady, her eyes meeting his. "And I choose that, I choose us. I choose this, whatever it may bring." Victor's smile was faint, but it reached his eyes. "Then we begin a new chapter," he said quietly. The city below seemed brighter now, though still edged with shadows. But Alara no longer feared them. She had faced the curse, understood it, and controlled it. She had faced danger, survived it, and emerged stronger. And she had found a bond with Victor, complicated, intense, but real. As they walked through the garden, side by side, the pendant around Alara's neck glowed softly. It was no longer just a symbol of a curse. It was a symbol of her power, her choice, and her freedom. And somewhere far in the shadows, a figure watched, silent and still. But this time, Alara did not feel fear. She felt ready. The night had passed, and with it came the promise of a future she would shape herself, not dictated by curses, debts, or enemies, but by her courage, her choices, and her bond with Victor. For the first time, she was truly free.